everybody and welcome back to my channel. Now in today's video I'm actually going to be doing a first impressions on the new Superdrug sponges. Now as you can see I've already used it by this point, but these sponges come in this little packet here and they literally cost £1. So I'm going to be giving it a go for you guys today and showing you what I think, because if this works really well it's obviously going to be such a bargain and such an amazing dupe for like beauty blenders and Real Techniques complexion sponge. So yeah, let's get into the video and give this bad boy a go. So this is the shape of the makeup sponge. So as you can see it's got a slightly different shape to the beauty blender and the Real Techniques complexion sponge, because it does have that kind of dip in the middle, and it feels quite like hard. It feels a lot more dense than the Real Techniques complexion sponge, but I have actually heard that the beauty blender is a lot more like less squidgy, if that makes sense. So this might be quite comparable in density to the actual beauty blender, but I am going to be using this wet because I tend to use all of my sponges wet. I find they work a lot better. I'm just going to go ahead and wet this, and I'm also just going to quickly prime my skin ready for my foundation. So I've just gone ahead and wet the sponge, and I actually don't feel like this has got any bigger, which is really weird because when I wet my Real Techniques complexion sponge it does actually get a lot bigger in size. It definitely feel like it's wet, like it's definitely damp. So I prime my face and now I'm going to go straight in with my foundation. So for this I'm going to be using my L'Oreal True Match foundation. Mine is in the shade 1.5 Linen. What I think I'm going to do is put a bit of foundation on my hand and then kind of dispense it around my face and then blend it in, because I feel like if I apply it straight onto the sponge I don't want the sponge to soak up a lot of the product. So yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and apply dots of this over my face. I normally use like a pump for my cheek, a pump for this cheek and a pump for my forehead, which may seem like a lot, like this does maybe seem like a lot of product, but when you're using a sponge it does soak up quite a bit of the excess product. So if you do have too much on your face it is actually going to soak it up, so it's not actually that much when it comes to actually blending it out. I'm going to go ahead and blend this in with the sponge. It feels really hard on my face. I don't know what side I'm using, this side, but I feel like the bottom might actually be better because it's slightly bigger. I'm not gonna lie, this feels really hard on my skin. I feel like wetting it hasn't really done anything, like it hasn't got any softer or anything like that. God, this is quite hard to like go around the eye area because it's so hard. It doesn't like sink into like the little bits around your face. Like I found with the Real Techniques complexion sponge, when you like press it on your face it kind of sinks into your skin, whereas this doesn't. I've just brought you slightly closer in so you can really see what this is looking like. That's actually blended it pretty well. Like that looks just as seamless as it would if I'd used my Real Techniques complexion sponge, so I'm pretty impressed with that so far. So I've just finished blending and I'm not gonna lie, that looked pretty damn good. Like it's really blended it evenly over my face. It doesn't look cakey at all. Like I think it absorbed quite a lot of product by the looks of it, but I don't know whether that's just because the sponge is so light it looks like it's absorbed a lot of product, because it might not have done. But this has given me exactly the same sort of finish, exactly the same sort of coverage that my Real Techniques complexion sponge would have given me. So far I'm pretty impressed. The only thing that I don't like about it is the fact that it's so hard. I feel like because the sponge is so hard you have to be a little more gentle on your skin, whereas when I'm using the Real Techniques complexion sponge I really just do it really fast, but with this you have to be a little more gentle and do it just a little bit slower, just so that you don't prod yourself in the face too hard. So for concealer I'm using the Collection Lasting Perfection concealer in the shade 1 Fair. This is my all-time favourite concealer. I absolutely love it. So I've just applied the same amount of concealer as I would usually apply, and now I'm just going to go ahead and blend this in. I feel like this could be kind of hard to blend because obviously the majority of this concealer is around my eye area, and that's where I'm a bit like, I don't know, I'm not so keen on this sponge just because I don't really want to prod it too close to my eyes. This is taking a lot longer than it normally would just because I'm having to be so gentle because I really don't want to prod myself in the eye. The pointy end does actually make it a lot easier to blend under the eyes though. So that blended fairly well, but I do feel like it hasn't given me as much coverage as blending out with my usual sponge would. So I feel like this kind of proves that it does soak up a little bit more product than a usual sponge would. I also feel that's to do with because when I wet it, it didn't soak up as much water. So the less water it's going to soak up, the more foundation and concealer it's going to soak up. So I wouldn't personally use this for concealer. I feel like it's a bit too hard to like prod around your eye area. I also like to go over my eyelids with the concealer as well to kind of prime them, but I was a bit cautious to doing this just because it is such a hard sponge. But for the foundation, I think it done a great job. Like, it looks exactly the same as my usual sponge would. I do normally use the Real Techniques complexion sponge on an everyday basis, if you are wondering. So for powder, I'm going to be using the Lottie London Ready Set Go translucent finishing powder, and this is obviously a loose powder. So what I'm going to do is dip the sponge in the powder and then apply it underneath the eyes to see if I can set them with the sponge, because I feel like it's quite hard. It's quite good for this sort of thing because it really does pack on the product. So I'm just brushing it away. I think that worked so well. If you bake on a regular basis, I would really recommend this sponge because you really cannot go wrong, and it done a really good job at setting my under eyes. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go ahead and do the rest of my makeup, and then I'll come back to you guys and tell you what my final thoughts are. So I've just finished applying the rest of my makeup, and I really do love how this looks on my skin. I feel like that sponge done such a great job at blending out my foundation. I don't think it'll be a sponge that I'll be using again for my concealer, but it would definitely be a sponge that I'll use again for my foundation. I do still prefer my Real Techniques sponge just because it is slightly like less hard. It's not so hard and dense as this sponge, but that's not to say that it done a great job at blending out the products on my face. And I think for £1 you really cannot go wrong. So if you're starting out with makeup and you don't really want to pay £8 or £10 or whatever you're going to pay for a sponge, I really would recommend picking one of these up and giving it a go, because it's actually a lot better than I thought it would be. Please go and check out this sponge if you haven't already. I would actually really recommend it, especially for £1. You literally cannot go wrong. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I really do hope that you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!